Welcome back. So, Zambia, 7 days of national mourning in honor of the country's former President Edgar Lungu, who died at the age of 68, was at the helm from January 2015 until August 2022. Current President Hakainde Hichilema. The government says all flags will fly half-mast from the 8th of June till the 14th, and entertainment events will be suspended during that time. Lungu was receiving medical treatment at a clinic in Victoria. He was suffering from recurring achalasia, a condition caused by the narrowing of the esophagus. Well, earlier today, the Secretary General of Lungu's political home, the Patriotic Front, addressed the media of issues that include the repatriation of Lungu's remains. To discuss this, I am joined by Mr. Raphael Nakachinda, who is the General of the Patriotic Front. Mr. Nakachinda, good evening to you.
Good evening. Thank you very much, and I'm honored to be accorded this opportunity to interact with you, and I look forward to an engaging discussion.
Yeah, I imagine a difficult time, obviously, for the party at the moment. I mean, talk to me about, I suppose, the sense within the Patriotic Front at the moment, and then we'll get into some of the details of what happens next.
Very devastating. We are all, not only as Patriotic Front and the Tonse Alliance, but the people of Zambia mourning. It's shocking. It was sudden, unexpected. Just a few days or a week before, he was, in his usual humorous manner, decided to have an interview with one of the academicians here, Professor Shua, and it's encouraging for Zambians to see him look healthy, and very hopeful that he will be returning back home and be able to continue on the journey that he had undertaken to continue to be of service to the nation. Basically, to come and just hear all of a sudden that something has gone wrong, we cannot believe it. Everybody thinks that just, experiencing a nightmare, maybe at some point they'll wake up and find that the reality. So we're in that mode as a nation and as a party.
I'm going to get into just the details surrounding his passing, where it was, perhaps some clarity as well, because there are still so many questions around what has happened to the former president. How long was he in South Africa, and your understanding of what it was that was to his death?
Approximately, slightly above, 5-6 months. He's been here.
For medical treatment?
Yes, for medical treatment. The journey is such that in 2015, he was attended to, here in South Africa. From then on, he was on some kind of a scheduled process of reviews and being tested and so on. And that was undertaken for the period in 2015 all the way to 2021. When he left office, unfortunately, our colleagues that are in government decided to, without justification or any legal backing, restrict his movements. In 2022, he did indicate that he needed to, go for his usual medical reviews so that his condition could be attended to. Strangely, government did not allow him to travel. Of course, as it were, his attitude was always active, but another year passed, 2023, he wrote to government indicating that I think his condition required urgent attention. Government replied and said didn't have money to facilitate. He communicated he was ready to finance his activities. I mean, this particular, engagement in South Africa. The government said you cannot travel. And obviously, when you're dealing with the situation, he attempted to travel out of the country. Unfortunately, he was checked in, got even into the plane. Government, law enforcement agencies were instructed to go and pluck him out of the plane. Until 20 2024, towards the end into 2025, it so happened that obviously because of the many activities that we may not have the time to discuss around abuse of human rights, freedoms of people, and the deteriorating of the democratic space in our country, the UN sent a rapporteur to come and invest these human rights abuses. So because of the attitude of the government that we have led by Mr. Kande display to the gallery, they always want to present the fact that they are adhering to certain, democratic norms and principles. And because there was this rapporteur, gotten into the country, we said this is opportunity because they will be inclined to stop you because they'll be exposed, so that maybe you could be able to be attended. And that attempt worked. And this basic country got into this place and immediately got here, and when the medical specialist attended to him or looked at his the first test, they actually pronounced in had you come 2 years earlier would not be where we are, to attempt to try and see what we can do. And that's how he was taken in and went through a very vigorous and quite strenuous therapy. God's grace, I think he seemed to have been on the mend. But I think issues that they were discussing was that outside the process he was going in, he needed some kind of an operation or surgery that he needed to go through.
Right.
To make is basically that I think his death could have been avoided had the right things been done, especially by the current regime.
Okay. Let me stop you, because I think there's a lot for us to just unpack with what you've already said. So the former president of Zambia dying here in South Africa, you say, is as a result of him sneaking out of Zambia to come to South Africa to get this medical attention. Was there official knowledge that the former president was in South Africa? So having snuck out, did he follow official enter South Africa? Was there knowledge by authorities in South Africa that he was here receiving medical treatment?
Well, of course, he came through the normal channels. When I use the term sneaking out, it's basically because consistently had been stopped from traveling. And the only time that he traveled was allowed pure that there was critical stakeholder in the name of a UN rapporteur that was investigating human rights abuses.
Sure.
So to that effect, he took advantage of that opportunity, knowing that the government would be reluctant to expose themselves by stopping him, obviously without any legal backing or any conventional reason for which you would stop somebody, a citizen, for this particular state from traveling, the former head of state from traveling. So he basically, stop him. But what they did after the rapporteur left, that those that were in duty at the time that he left Zambia were all fired at the airport.
Okay. But this is what I'm trying to get to. How much interaction did he have with officials here in South Africa? To the knowledge, I mean, surely when you have a former head of state in another country, you would have what is informed.
It was a private visit, and the normal immigration processes were followed. And he, I think, felt that having come in the manner that he came, like an ordinary person, he kept to himself. If there was engagement with the authorities, it was very remote.
Okay.
And that was the status quo. And the whole episode and period that has been here, he tried to keep to himself, so that he can basically be with family and be attended to by his doctors.
All right. You've got, of course, the government saying that, flags will be flown at half-mast, declaring a period for the country. Does that make it easier for the patriotic to work with government? in the repatriation process. Just talk to us about where we are with that, where our former president, and your making of the handling of his death, certainly by the government, especially in the plans towards the funeral.
First of all, we're here because he was our leader. He was part of the Patriotic Front family. And not only as president, I mean, from inception all the way. He rose through the ranks to become president. And I am here deployed by the party as Secretary General, able to stand with the family and participate in the process of making sure that this whole process goes right. But the family ultimately has the final say in terms of what should transpire. We didn't even expect that government had to do anything with the former president. We know that obviously they have an obligation because of the fact that his treatment up to the time that he died was politically motivated, the abuse and so on, because there was annoying part of and they are against the idea then that he would basically be the one competing in the six against so everything that was being done was basically trying to frustrate, that possibility. Where with all the abuses, the torment and anguish that was subjected to, the humiliation up to the point of death, they just showed up. Obviously, the motivation is the whole episode. The whole episode basically exposes them, but they just show up and said the process of us and repatriating to Zambia. Actually, when they're coming, according to the family, some permanent secretary was supposed to come. Next thing, we're having the current Foreign Affairs Minister, Haimbe, coming into the countries. We have to take the body tomorrow, without any recourse to the family.
Where are the remains at the moment?
Still within jurisdiction of South Africa, and the family are saying we still have certain processes undertaken in relation to the fact that this sudden death. They have to have some answers and closure to that effect. I not speak because that's a choice of the family. Engagements to be invited to witness. Clearly, there was a fiction that the government was, had taken. The family was saying, you can't just come in and, take this position that you're taking when this man that you want to statesman, the former head of state, you had stripped him off of all his entitlements, and the way you treated him was like an ordinary person. As a family, and based on his wishes, he went back to Zambia like an ordinary person, just like he came. And the family were ready through well wishes and others to be able to take his remains back to making the whole process.
So what is the plan now with getting, because, I mean, this is certainly I'm keen to hear what you would like to see from South African authorities, if at all, because a former statesman's remains are right now in South Africa. The family not happy with the government of Zambia taking over the process of repatriating the remains back to the home. So what is it that South African authorities need to say? Plan
we do understand that there are protocols around these issues. Obviously, there must have been a note verbal from Zambian government about what involvement they can get in. But all that cannot be actualized until the family, first of all, arrives at some kind of a mutual agreement with the government of Zambia. But the government of Zambia has taken an attitude of actual bulldozing and wanting to in a hostile manner, hijack the whole process. For their own sake, they want to cleanse themselves, to try and suggest, at this late hour, that basically they honored this man, they respected him. I think the family has any issues with the South African authorities, or indeed any of those that President Lungu worked with and are friends and so on. The issue is between the family, based on the way the former president and the government, the current government of Zambia. That is where basically issues need to be resolved. Otherwise, the whole process would have been, seamless had, first of all, the government of Zambia possibly apologized over the treatment that he was subjected to his death, and possibly also had come with an attitude of suggesting that we acknowledge that we're wrong, and this whole process, I think, is messy, and there is some kind of an attitude of taking a moment of introspection and admitting that things were wrong.
I'm speaking about authorities though, because, I mean, we have a Department of International Relations and Cooperation that I imagine would be somewhat invested in this process, because it does impact how we relate even with your home country, Zambia. And so the question around the role of South African authorities, what the family would like to do, and perhaps has the family spoken at all to South African authorities, the former president?
I may not authoritatively speak to that, but I want to believe that if the authorities here reached out to the family subject, at least the information I know and what I've witnessed in my involvement on behalf of the party and the people of Zambia is that remotely, the only indication that has come to the family around the desire by the authorities here to get involved came through the ministry, where there is a direct involvement. Authorities here and the interface with the family, I'm sure they're completely different.
Okay.
But that conversation took place, and I'm not aware that there's any engagement.
Interesting. You've got, coming out of that press briefing that you held today, IOL is reporting, and this is the headline that they've written, Edgar Lungu's death sparks out of poisoning and political suppression. Is there suspicion that there could have been a poisoning that led to the former president's death?
I think looking at the fact that among the procedures the family are in place is basically to establish the cause of through postmortem or indeed any of such procedures, but independent speaks to the fact that there could be concerns that have been raised by the family. And for us as Patriotic Front and Tonse Alliance, we stand with the family on that all questions the family may have may need answers. Yeah. And we're also interested
allow me to step in in the interest of time here, because I need as much done as possible, if you'll allow me. By the family that his death may not have just been an illness, but as a result of poisoning, where would those have stemmed from?
I may not have all the answer, but look, I was just indicated to you that personally I interacted with him on Thursday last week. He was even indicating I'm able to come this weekend so that we can be able to provide some of the activities that are taking place home. We have by-elections and so on. I told him it may not be easy to be possible this weekend, possibly next week, because I also had matters I needed to attend to. A small procedure I need to to be subjected to, and possibly by the time you're coming on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be back home. Boom, the situation is totally different. All the answers today, but I think the family is justified to start. How do we, this situation, all the speculations and all these things, put to rest?
One last question before I go, and that is now, what happens now? I mean, the time the family has given itself to get the former president's remains back to Zambia. Perhaps you can talk to me about that, and if at all, into what led to his death.
First of all, there's an impasse between the family and government.
Yes. There
was no agreement, but the government has decided to make a pronouncement. They have, quote unquote, honored him with 7 days of national mourning, starting today. As it were, the processes that are being undertaken, there is anticipation by Wednesday, and possibly then repatriate. But looking at the circumstances, it may not, possibly end on Wednesday. And if that happens, how does the pronouncement of 7 days of national mourning fit into all these processes? If, for example, the is to be repatriated beyond Wednesday, basically the government is trying, as far as we are concerned, you must bury within 7 days. Motivation and the hurry to have this thing come to a closure in that manner. There's definitely some kind of malicious motivation around this sort of thing. by political interest. Because when we have this interaction with the Foreign Affairs Minister, you're talking, people and so on and so forth. That tension they're talking about is not the responsibility of Hakainde. It is them that caused it because of the historical background. We cannot then be held responsible to try and cure a problem that they create. As far as we're concerned, we are demanding that the right thing be done. Let the whole process and the family be accorded what they have and the right they have to make sure that all the questions are brought to a close is provided. Then we can proceed.
Time, but I really do appreciate you coming into studio, as of course the party battles with having lost the former leader and former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu. Raphael Nakachinda there in South Africa supporting the